we're making the final dress. Hello and welcome to Couture Chronicles. If you're new here, my name is Daisy and I am attempting to make from scratch the most dreamy, magical, sparkly dresses like these. Starting with a 1930s inspired evening gown to wear to the greatest night of the jazz age. Last week's episode was definitely the most hair-raising part of this project so far, as I cut into the most expensive fabric I've bought in my life, and there were definitely some slip-ups. If you want to catch all of my mini heart attacks, here's a link to last week's episode for you. And if you're new to this series and want to start at the beginning, here's a link to episode number 1. On today's episode, we are getting down to business and starting to drape the final dress. So let's get cracking with episode number 8. Hello, Editing Daisy, just popping in quickly to say hello and thank you to all the new subscribers. The last episode went a little bit crazy and the channel has now got over 100 subscribers, which is absolutely wild to me, considering I set a goal for 20 subscribers for the year. So thank you all for joining in with the series, and I'm absolutely loving chatting to you all in the comments, so don't be afraid to say hi if you want to. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and follow so you don't miss any of the action, and I can promise you that this is just the first dress. There are so many fantastic, amazing dresses in the pipeline, so you definitely don't want to miss out. Anyway, thank you all, and back to the episode. Right, first things first, I need to give everything a bit of an iron. Off camera, I've already sewn the two sides of the straps together, and I'm ironing these first because they're small, so I can get a bit of practice in before trying the bigger pieces. These press really well with just the iron on a low temperature. I am being super cautious because the last thing that I want to do is ruin the silk right now. However, when I go to iron a bigger section, having the iron on a low temperature just isn't cutting it. So I stopped right there and did a bit of research and found that if I got the silk really quite damp, then it would iron out a lot better. Now, I didn't want to use the steam or spray functions of the iron because goodness knows what rubbish is lurking up in there, and I didn't want to transfer that onto the silk. So what I've got instead is I've got a separate squirty bottle just filled with water, which I then use to get the silk really damp. And that worked a charm. So with all the pieces now beautifully pressed, it's time to start draping onto the mannequin. As always, I'm starting with the top piece, and all of the effort that I put into making sure that the pleats were correct in the red mock-up and the twirl really paid off because it was breezy draping this final version of the top piece. So then I could quickly stitch those pleats together using all of those stitch marks we transferred over from the paper pattern. While I was there, I also did a quick roll hem on the neckline before stitching it onto the ribbon structure on the mannequin. Happy with how the top panel looks and G'd on by how quickly that came together, I tackle one of the side panels next. Again, using those million green pleat markers to help me pin it in the right position. And this is how it looks from the front. And this is how the side panel looks from the back. What I didn't consider when draping the mock-up with the red satin was how heavy it would be compared to the final fabric, and actually the silk is noticeably lighter, which means that it's not holding its shape as well as the satin did, and I think it's looking a bit droopy. After a solid day of sewing, I really did not have enough brain capacity to figure out a solution to this, so I slept on it. And in the morning I figured that I could actually use the leftover organza to add enough stiffness to the hip area to create more defined swags. To do this, I marked with pins where the waist was. I figured there's no point backing the entire side panel in organza. I mean, I don't think I have enough fabric to do that anyway, so we're just going to conserve it around the hips. Then taking the side panel off of the mannequin, I simply lay the organza up to the pin line and stitch around the outside. Once they were successfully joined together, I could then start the process of repinning the side panel back onto the mannequin and defining those hip pleats. This I think worked really well. I think there's loads more definition in those hip pleats. They've kind of got a little bit of life of their own instead of hanging limply. So yeah, I'm really happy with how these are now turning out. However, now I've got the challenge of replicating this with the other side panel. So I have the bright idea of pinning the second side panel on top of the one I just draped, so at least I can definitely replicate the top torso of pleats and get the pin line in the same place. And that worked fine. I easily got the same waist pin line and managed to add the organza to the same place. So far, so good. Real issue came when I started to drape the second side panel and found that it was super difficult to mirror the pleats of the opposite side, especially where they meet up at the back. It ended up looking really lopsided, and I ended up spending 3 days just unstitching, re-sewing, re-draping, just anything to try and make this match, and it's so frustrating and I'm quickly running out of time, so I just have to put aside my perfectionist brain and get this done. Happy enough with how both of those side panels are looking, now it's time to sew them to the understructure, and I'm using little tacks to make sure that those pleats under the armpit don't move. And once those are done, I'm just rolling the top edge and the side edge over the top of the ribbon and using a fell stitch to keep them in place. Then to sew fastenings to both sides of the top. As you can see, these fastenings are absolutely solid. There is no way these are going to distort and snap like the last ones did. Once they are sewn in, next is the cape. Now the two long edges of the cape are both salvage edges, so I'm just hemming the top and the bottom. Cue in hours of roll hemming. If anyone is not sure what I mean by roll hemming, what you do is you take the raw edge of your fabric and you very gently roll it very tightly a couple of times so your raw edge is encapsulated within those rolls, and then again fell stitching very small precise stitches to keep that encapsulated. I have to say, I'm not the hugest fan of hand stitching. My patience much prefers whizzing something up on the machine, but I want to do this properly, so hand sewing it is. Draping the cape was definitely interesting. Because I didn't have enough silk for my pattern, I'm now having issues making it fit, and it turned into a bit of a Goldilocks issue. First, I draped it too high on the bum and then it couldn't reach the shoulder. Then I draped it too low and it was looking awful. So then finally I draped it somewhere between those two in the middle, and yeah, it was okay. We made it work. Again, because the pattern cutting for the cape was a bit of a mess, I ended up having to come up with this folded solution for the top of the cape to make it fit. Luckily, it's going to be on the inside of the cape, so nobody will see it. Then I had to sew all those folds together and insert it into the shoulder seam. And I think when you look at this finished, I think it ended up okay. That was a lot, but the bulk of the dress sewing is done. Apart from some side seams and a lot of hemming, it's wearable. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be decent, but it is wearable. There is 3 days till we go to the greatest night of the jazz age, and there is a ton of beading to do, as well as those side seams and hemming and all of that other stuff that I haven't quite finished yet. Join me next time for the absolute mad scrabble of getting this dress ready to wear out. It has been a crazy long process and we are by no means finished yet. In the meantime, keep being fabulous and I will see you next week. Bye! It's not what I'm going for. Draping the cake was... Cake? I keep doing that. Serve it around the hips. Oh. I'm not ready.